Good morning. I'm so thankful to greet you all this morning. Welcome to Bible class with Betty. I thank the Lord for each of you. And now, last week I told you that my videos appear on Facebook and YouTube, and that the comment section was not working on YouTube. But now I can report to you that the comment section is working on YouTube and Facebook. So I would love to hear your thoughts and questions either on Facebook or YouTube. So good morning to everybody. We're continuing our studies from the book of Nahum. Today we're in chapter 3, which is the last chapter of this prophecy that God gave to Nahum. He's labeled as one of the minor prophets, not because his message is minor, but because it's brief and a very short book of the Old Testament. Now, the name Nahum means comfort, God comforts. And the Nineveh is who's being spoken to, and Nineveh is a type of a nation in the world system that's operated by Satan through kings and other peoples of that nation. And they are symbolic of the church age in that it's a picture of Christendom. And Christendom simply says that the world church exists along with the true church, the church of brotherly love, at the same time, but that the world church is energized and operated by Satan himself. And so as we endeavor into chapter 3 from the book of Nahum, we'll be focusing on the subject that we reap what we sow. And so chapter 3 begins with a warning or impending judgment. It says, "Woe to the bloody city." And you'll see an exclamation mark behind the word city if you're reading the King James Version. This city, it says, it is all full of lies and robbery. The prey of the victims of this bloody city are not departed. People are being victimized and criminalized by Nineveh, who portrays itself as believers in the finished work of Christ, but their behavior displays the work of Satan, and his mission is to steal, kill, and destroy. And a verse of scripture I want to read to you before we get started is Galatians chapter 6. Verses 6, Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 9. It says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. So this bloody city, back to Nahum chapter 3, verse 1, is a city of murders, robbery, and lies. And the victims of the people of the city are being oppressed and depressed. And one thing about us reaping what we sow is that we have all been given the free will of choice. We get to choose who we follow. We can either follow the world, the flesh, and the devil, or we can follow the Spirit of the living God. And our choices have consequences. And based on our choices, we will reap, and our destiny will be determined by the choices we make. God gives us all of his goodness, and he gives us evidence of who he is and his great love for us. But he does not choose for us. He gives the evidence. The world, the flesh, and the devil gives their evidence. And here we are. We have to choose whether we're going to follow after the flesh or after the Spirit. So, woe is a pronouncement of judgment upon this bloody city. And then a description in verse 2 of how they operate. The noise of the whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels and of the prancing horses and of the jumping chariots. The horseman, verse 3, lifted up both the bright spear and the glittering spear, or the shining spear. And there's a multitude of slain amongst the people, and a great number of carcasses or dead bodies. And there is no end to their corpses or their dead bodies. And they stumble upon their corpses. In this battle that Nineveh is perpetrating upon the people of Israel, the northern kingdom is organized and has swift beasts and chariots and swords and spears, and they're murdering some, and others will they take into captivity. Then God says in verse 4, because of the multitude of thy whoredoms, of the well-favored harlot, the mysteries, you're doing this because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mystery of witchcrafts that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. This is a picture of Mystery Babylon, the great harlot, the world system that entices and seduces people of every nation and every people of the earth to follow her deceptive and lying ways. And she operates through the political, the religious, and the economic systems of the world. So we get to where we will be able to choose whether we're going to follow the ways of the world or if we're going to follow the Lord. And so it is because of the multitude of whoredoms that she is named in chapter 2 of Nahum, verse 7 as Huzzab, Huzzab. And God is letting the world system, Mystery Babylon, know that the end of her debauchery and lies and deception are coming to an end. And in the book of the Revelation, you can read about her destruction in chapters 17 and 18 of the Revelation. Verse 5. Behold, God says, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts. And remember, the Lord of hosts refers to God as being the ultimate commander-in-chief over all the hosts and all the things that are in the earth. And he says, behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will discover or uncover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and thy kingdom, and the kingdoms thy shame. So there is coming a time that Babylon or Huzzab or the professed church will be exposed to the world for who they are. They will either be able to stand or they will be charged with iniquity, and the Lord will say, depart from me, I never knew you. And God says in verse 6, and I will cast abominable filth upon thee, and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock. Again, you can see in the Revelation chapter 18 what's going to happen to Babylon, and how the nations, the rich folks of the world, and the merchants, and those who have this world's goods are mourning at her destruction. But you'll also see the saints are believers rejoicing at her destruction, because God is going to throw her out as a repulsive and vile or despised vile, and as a gazing stock. And it shall come to pass that, this is verse 7, God is still speaking. And it shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee. They'll run from you because of the destruction they see coming. And they will say, Nineveh is laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforters for her? She will have no one to comfort her. And remember, I'm talking about the world system of power, prestige, and prosperity. And our choices cause us, when we make a choice to follow the Lord, then as Moses in the book of Hebrews chapter 11 says, and Moses chose, he made a choice to suffer the affliction of the people of God rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. In this world of seeking wealth, power, and prestige, it's a temporary existence. It's just for a season, and it may bring much pleasure, but the end result will be destruction. or we can seek those things which are above, because the things which are above are eternal. So there will be no comforters for Nineveh or the world system when she is destroyed. Verse 8, art thou better than populous No, that was situate? That word situate means located. That was located among the rivers, that had the waters round about it, whose rampart or defensive wall was the sea, and her wall was from the sea. So No is one of the great cities of Africa and Egypt. On the African continent, there are many other countries who live in countries, but the continent is occupied basically by Ethiopians and Egyptians and other nations who live on that continent. And so they were populated by these people. And God is saying, are you, talking to Nineveh, are you better? I've judged that continent. Are you better than them? And then verse 9 says, Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Ethiopia and Egypt was Nineveh's confidence. Put and Lubim were thy helpers. So the people of African descent, and remember, Egypt is a country on the African continent. If you hear what's going on in the Middle East, the continents of Africa, Asia, Europe, and the other continents, even North America and South America, you will understand that Ethiopia is the continent of Africa. So he says, Nineveh, you sought Ethiopia and Egypt to help you. And Put is a country in Ethiopia, and Lubim is a country in Egypt, or the people of those countries. God says in verse 10, yet was she, that is Egypt, Put, Ethiopia, yet was she carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children also were dashed in pieces at the top of all the streets. And they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. Many people of today believe that the African slavery came as a result of Americans enslaving them. They did, but then it was prophesied by Isaiah that there would be African slavery, and brown and black people would become slaves to another nation, not their own. And you can read those prophecies in Isaiah chapters 18, 19, and 20. And so every man shall reap what he sows, even though God will allow nations to intermingle with each other. He will hold each person accountable for how they treat other people. So no people has a right to oppress and enslave and oppress and demoralize, murder, and destroy another people. Verse 11, God says to Nineveh, you or thou also shall be drunken, that is, out of control. Thou shalt be hid, you'll seek to hide yourself. Thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. The enemy is Satan himself. Verse 12, all thy strongholds shall be like fig trees with the first ripe figs. If they be shaken, they shall fall into the mouth of the eater. And that's Satan's mission, to steal, kill, and destroy. Verse 13, behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women, are behaving themselves like women. The gates of thy land shall be set wide open unto thine enemies. That's when the wrath of the vengeance of God is spoken of in chapter 1 of Nahum will take place. The fire shall divide thy bars, or your means of protection. Verse 14, draw thee waters for the siege. In other words, try to protect yourself. Fortify thy strongholds. Go into clay and tread the mortar. Make strong the brickling. Brickling speaks of places where bricks are made, and it's done by slave labor. Verse 15, there shall the fire devour thee. Even in your hiding places, the fire of my judgment shall devour thee. The sword shall cut thee off. My word shall cut thee off. It shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the locust. A multitude will not be able to save you. Verse 16, thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. You've gotten lifted up in pride, and the merchants of the world have gotten lifted up with you. The cankerworm of the oppression spoil it and flieth away. Thy crown, those that you count on, are as the locusts, and thy captains as the great grasshoppers, which camp in the hedges in the cold day. But when the sun ariseth, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. When God sends out his army of locusts and caterpillar in the last days, the days of the great tribulation period, they will not be able to hide themselves. And wherever they go, they will not be able to hide. In verse 18, thy shepherds slumber, talking about false prophets who lead people to follow the ways of the world, those who have turned from the Lord and is living in the state of apostasy. Apostasy is turning away from the truth of God's word. So verse 18 says, thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. The king of Assyria is Satan, who operates through people and leaders of all nations. Thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. Those, when this time comes, there will be no noble people in the bottomless pit and in the lake of fire and brimstone. Thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathereth them. There is no, verse 19, there is no healing of thy bruise or of thy sin. Thy wound is grievous. God will not acquit the wicked. All that hear the bruit or the fall of thee shall clap the hands over thee. For upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually? So all of us in the world, we're either following after truth or we're following after error. So let us make choice today to follow after the Lord, because every one of us will reap what we sow. Now I have a thought. This concludes the book of Nahum for this time. And I'm going to share with you one of my thoughts that I shared on Facebook 5 years ago. We are responsible for our choices. What does it mean to be simple-minded? It does not mean stupid, ignorant, nor foolish. According to Proverbs chapter 1, verses 4 and 5, it is only to the simple or the innocent that God can impart wisdom, knowledge, discretion, and understanding. We can then be instructed, corrected, and prepared for this journey of life. When the simple, the same innocent, ignore or reject the word of God, they then become the stupid, the ignorant, and the foolish one. So as being simple, we're innocent until we have to make a choice as to whether we're going to follow God or if we're going to follow the devil. So thank you all for listening today, and I hope this lesson, this book of Nahum and the lesson today will be of help to you. Remember to email me at bjt1125@yahoo.com or continue to view my other channels, the book of Nahum, the book of Matthew, Hosea, Proverbs, 1st, 2nd, John, the book of the Revelation. So I have several channels on YouTube now, so I appreciate your comments and your questions. So have a great day, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.